So, hello everybody, another edition of the Remote Work Life Summit, and today, yet another wonderful guest. I've got Ben Congleton of Olark, and Ben, I've been following Ben. I tend to follow quite a lot of people online, but there's a certain criteria of people who I want to get online and really interview them to find out more about their business. Olark is a wonderful software application, I guess you could say. It helps to build relationships. It helps businesses to grow, and obviously, in keeping with the whole idea of remote work and distributed teams, Ben is a founder and a CEO of one of those. So, and a very successful one, I might add as well. So, as I said, I wanted to get him on here to find out more about Olark and to find out more about him. Ben, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, Alex, glad to be here.
Excellent. And Ben, as I said, I know a bit about Olark, but there's going to be one or two people out there who may not know about Olark. So, could you tell us a bit more about Olark and how you got to where you
Yeah,
are?
yeah, for sure. If you visit a website recently, you've probably noticed that in the bottom right-hand corner, there's often a little button that says like "Click here to chat." We're one of the first companies to do that. We got that thing started back in 2009, and a lot of the websites that you visit today have Olark on them. A lot of them have are white labeled. A lot of them are competitors, but more or less, we got that whole craze started. We were the first company that decided like, hey, chat should be on page. It shouldn't be in a pop-up window, and there should be a person there, not a robot, not like someone in a call center that doesn't understand the business. It should be like someone that works at your company, helping to sell the product, because people have questions before they buy, and it turns out that if you talk to them when they have these questions quickly and instantly, they're more likely to buy. And so we have uh, over 12,000 businesses using us today.
Wow.
We've helped companies like Bonobos grow. We've Microsoft as a customer, and even really small customers like little like plumbing groups or real estate management companies. Like if you have a website and you have traffic on that website, you need chat on it. You don't have to be there 24/7. You could be there just a couple hours of the day, but you will capture more leads and you will be able to get more value out of your website by just being there to answer questions from the people that are on your site.
And there's massive value in that. I mean, like you said, I saw a statistic the other day that the drop off rate or the bounce rate for a website is something like 80 or 90% for a first time visitor. So I guess you're solving a massive problem for
Well, I think the issue is that a lot of people aren't going to pick up the phone when they have a question, and a lot of people like leave without getting their questions answered. And so, chat is a place somewhere between leaving and making a phone call. So we just try to lower that barrier to communicate. And it turns out that this benefits basically any business that sells online. So we have just sort of such a wide range of customers. But if your listeners haven't tried out chat, I mean, we have both a free edition and a free trial edition. So my belief is basically if you're in the business of trying to grow or help your customers, communicating with them is very important. And so chat is sort of how we got started in 2009. I've been really kind of pushing on that, trying to build a really easy, affordable way of adding that communication channel to your website.
it's massive value. And like I said, we only have the best on this on the Remote Work Life Summit, and that's, as I said, that's why I invited Ben and one of the pioneers in this whole game. So I mean, there's so many of them out there now, aren't there, Ben? There's so many. Chat seems to be a buzzword right now, and sort of AI and all that sort of thing. And like you
Yeah,
said,
yeah. I mean, it is very interesting. I think right now we're seeing this big revolution where a lot of people think they can replace all the people that work in their organizations and customer service with some sort of AI. I personally don't believe that's actually a great idea. I think that it has a lot of bad consequences to try to just replace customer service with a bot. NLP is natural language processing is not that great right now, and so I think right now a lot of people just like have this idea in their head that you can just magically make customer service automated and not have to pay or employ all these people. But for me, like at Olark, our philosophy is much more on like, hey, you have people working in your company, you have people working in customer service. How can we with technology make those people 10 times as efficient, or help those people, feel 10 times as good about, doing their job every day, going to work every day. And so, the interesting thing about remote work, right, is it's very easy to do customer service remotely. And that if you have the right software in place, you can, do that work from your house, on your couch, after you take your kids to school, before they come back. Like, it's a job that really lends itself to remote work. And it's also a job where I think the human element actually adds quite a bit of value. So, if I'm trying to buy a product and I'm trying to buy a product from a bot versus a human being, if I'm talking to a bot, I know I'm talking to a bot. I'm not creating a relationship with this bot. If I'm talking to a human, though, like I think you have the opportunity to build a deeper relationship and create a relationship between that person at your company and that shopper that adds brand value. It boosts word of mouth referral. It brings insight into your organization because people are now like communicating with customers, not just a robot trying to deflect them from talking to a human. From my standpoint, I'm pro humans. I think whenever we're shopping, whenever we're buying something, we want someone who understands what it's like to be a human and has a range of expertise and is not just sort of a fixed script that can answer like a couple different questions.
Yeah, and I think we joke about it and we laugh about it, but I think even customers who visit websites these days, the lay person who doesn't know anything about AI, they know, don't they? They know it's a robot when a automated sequence is sort of put before them. They already know that, don't they?
I mean, whether they know it or not, like if they don't know it, it might even be worse because they just think the person they're dealing with is an idiot. Like, like if they don't, like there's two outcomes, right? The outcome is they know it's a bot, which means that they know that the company on the other end doesn't necessarily care about them enough to put a person there to talk to them, or they're fooled into thinking they're talking to a human being, and then that human being reaches a point where there's an exception in that such that the script can't handle the question that they're asking.
Yeah.
And then the person, the lay person is just freaking confused because they were having this conversation with this great person bot thing,
robot, yeah.
And all of a sudden, like it just doesn't compute and it's broken. And I think, if for any of you who've had to try to have like an actual conversation with Siri or Google Now or these like basically the best AIs out there,
yeah,
you will know that there's still a lot of problems in that technology, and it's not ready to say like replace people. The best implemented bots I've seen are just asking people a couple of questions and trying to qualify them before sending them to a salesperson. Like it's, I think there is a role for that sort of tool, but I would put those tools more on the side of like, hey, I have more customers reaching out to me than I can possibly handle post-sale. Pre-sale, I think you really want to put the opportunity and the time into building those relationships and creating that brand connection. Post-sale, I can understand if you just want to like drive your costs down. But ultimately, I think there's a lot that you get from having those customer service teams that are like things are a little bit hard to attach value to. For example, if you have a customer service person on your team answering questions, that person actually is gaining quite a bit of customer empathy. Absolutely. And there's someone that can be promoted into other roles within your organization. Remove that person, replace them with a bot, and try to hire like junior people that you want to bring into your organization and grow into more roles. And you may not have other entry level positions that are going to cause them to have such a high level of customer empathy. Mm-hmm. So I think there's just a lot. There's a lot kind of like wrapped up in this bot thing. I don't need to spend the whole interview talking about it, but my general philosophy is like, hey, if you're a small business, you're probably the way that you compete in this industry is through the relationships, through your personality, and the better job you can do putting your personality out there, so the people that are engaging with you on your website or meeting you on your website, like feel that human connection, like the better off you're going to be, because you're not going to be able to compete with the Amazons and the Googles and the Facebooks of the world by out automating them. I can guarantee you that. You're going to have to out care them and out human them. And, you know, that's sort of where Olark sits in our philosophy, as we sort of think about like the chat bot revolution. To me, just like a huge opportunity for small businesses to lose or to try to save money in a way that causes them to lose what is special about them for their customers.
No, absolutely. And I think, yeah, well, there's probably a bit of an overemphasis on the whole aspect of AI and its value from that standpoint. Even when I speak to Derek Anderson of Startup Grind, and he was saying literally the same thing as you, that it's all about, you know, building those relationships, communication that's human and is relevant and, you know, is meaningful. That's what's going to grow a business. That's what's going to, you know, that insight that you get from those conversations. And
Right.
I mean, you got to a point where this has been your big thing. Olark is your big thing. How did you get to the point of knowing that Olark was the direction that you wanted to take your career?
That's a really good question. I love that question. You know, I think I've done a lot of interviews on this, so I don't need to like go into a ton of detail. But like, if you look at like, I don't know, like there's a good Mixergy interview where I kind of go into a lot of detail. There's I think Groove HQ has a pretty good interview with me talking about sort of some of the decisions there. I think I'll give you like the really short answer, because I don't want to like spend the whole interview on that.
Well, stuff that will help our audience out, you know.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think like for me, I am not someone who like sits down and says I'm gonna put a man on the moon or something like that. Like, I don't like build these like really long term plans. I think the way that I ended up sort of running Olark, and it ended up being something that was really important to me, is just sort of a general philosophy about how like I want to start a business. And like right when I started this thing, like kind of before, it was like we might have gotten into Y Combinator, or maybe a little bit before Y Combinator, I wrote this post, and it was basically a blog post about how what I really wanted to do was to build a company where I could hang out with my friends, building something amazing and helping people. Like that's sort of core to, I think, who I am as a person. Mm-hmm. And like, and I think that prior to Olark, I had another company, like it was a web hosting company / consulting firm, and I was kind of getting a little bit of that need fulfilled. But then when we started Olark, and it was, you know, just like 3 or 4 of us, it was just like a couple friends hanging out, trying to like make this thing into reality. And as we've scaled and grown it, I think that dream has really stayed alive. I think building this really great team with this really great culture, and tackling challenges that are important to the world and important to our customers is a really easy way to kind of stay energized and want to come to work every day. Mm-hmm. And I think like, for me anyway, there's this idea of live chat, like Olark live chat. And that's, to me, that is just a piece. That is a very small piece of like the total set of problems that we're interested in. Mm-hmm. It turned out that like at the beginning, there was this big opportunity to build and kind of invent the way that chat worked on websites, right? So like we sort of invented the way that people have grown to engage with websites. And that's awesome. It's awesome to like kind of invent something and see it taken far further than you could even take it. And I think like that's sort of what we've seen recently with all the new companies spawning up and their new takes on this and their new approaches. I think that our approach of being a very human-centric, like kind of focusing on the agent and growing them, is going to work for like a lot of businesses, but it's not going to work for everyone. Like if you're trying to drive costs all the way down, like you're going to put some automation there, and you'll figure it out. But we'll focus on the guys who want sort of the higher value from mm-hmm. their customers, like the more valuable customers. But that said, I think what I've realized over the years is really the thing that makes me very excited is this idea of making business human. So both the idea of sort of helping businesses connect with each other as people, as humans, and then also building software that kind of emphasizes what people do really well. So, there's a lot of technologists who build software because they love technology and they love to just like build this cool tech. I think at Olark, we've really like the thing that we're excited about is like helping people. And so like the cool tech is just like a way in which we can help people.
Sure.
And, if you think about the org we've built and our set of values, that's sort of what I'm excited about. I'm like excited about sort of giving value systems to more businesses so they can build cultures that really care about their employees, or giving value systems that make remote work easier for other people to adopt. Like if we can hand you a handbook and you can take remote work and you can make it work, and you can make it work the way we did, because I think that our team feels very empowered. Our team cares a ton about where they work, and they feel absolutely trusted. And I think maybe Olark isn't, ourselves as a business is not going to scale to employ every remote worker, but heck, if we can give some guidance to those other companies employing remote workers, I think that would be a really great way to make impact and to make more businesses more human and more caring. There's so I guess like your original question of how did I arrive here? I started off just wanting a place where I could hang out with my friends, building cool stuff, and then I realized that I sort of wanted to figure out how you could scale that and bring that to more people who weren't just working at Olark. And our lever is we're pretty good at building products, and we're pretty good at kind of thinking big and empowering teams. And as long as I can keep doing that, I'm having a good time. So
sounds good to me. Sounds good to me. And well, I love a lot. I'm making notes, by the way, as you're talking. So I'm remembering all these questions I've got. The more you're talking, the more questions that are coming to my mind. So, but that you talk about, the software being just a part of the actual grand scheme of things, but. And you mentioned remote work. Was remote work something that was, or putting together a remote team, something a deliberate part of that whole plan of yours?
yeah, it's funny, right? Because we're known as this remote company. Like we get like so many job applicants for our
I
positions. It's
bet.
like amazing. But like at the beginning, in the early days of this thing, I had run a remote company prior. So my web hosting company I ran prior to this was remote. And for Olark, we're thinking about trying something different. We're going to build a non-remote company,
Okay.
and that worked basically up until we tried to hire our first employee, and we had no money. And so we were in Silicon Valley. We didn't raise any money. We couldn't afford to get. I guess we did have one guy working for us for a bit, but then he left because people were paying way better than we could, even though he
Oh
loved
wow.
us. But we just like literally couldn't afford to pay people what they needed to make in that area. And so we hired a college friend of mine as employee number one, who was living in a much cheaper area. And I knew he was solid. I knew he'd be a great teammate. And so we took away, he had like an hour commute, maybe a 2 hour commute every day. We
Wow.
took that away. He got to work from home, changed his life. And even then, we weren't ready to go remote. We're still like, oh, well, we'll make exceptions here and there, but like, we really just don't want to be remote. So we built out kind of a customer service team in house, in California, that we tried to hire marketing. We're like, oh, we can't find anyone for marketing. Oh, there's this guy in Toronto. We'll hire him. We're like, oh no, but we're still remote. We're still not remote, and we would like keep kind of like. And then one co-founder moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and
Yeah.
we're like, okay, we'll have two offices. We'll have one office in California, we'll have one office in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we'll have a couple of exceptions kicking around. They're working remote, but for the most part, we're going to be a old
Bricks and
school
mortar.
bricks and mortar company. And then we were trying to hire for DevOps, and we were having the hardest. We're like, we want DevOps in an East Coast time zone so that they'll be closer to Europe, and we want them in Ann Arbor because that's where it would make sense based on like where we are. Where everyone's located. And we try to hire for this position. And by this point, we had a couple of people in our Ann Arbor office, a couple of people in San Francisco. I think we probably had maybe two remote employees at that time. And at that point, I looked forever trying to hire someone like for DevOps in Michigan. And we found this guy in Brooklyn, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm thinking about moving somewhere. Maybe I could move to Michigan." We're like, "Ah, that's good enough. We'll hire this guy." And after that hiring process, we were just like, "Screw it! Like, we're gonna hire remote. We can get really good people remote. We're not gonna care about where they're located." We spent like way too long trying to make that hire, and I think that was the real moment for me where remote had gone from like, oh, this is kind of like a bonus. Like if we find really good people and they don't want to move, we can hire them remote. It's like, no, we're just going to focus remote from here on out. And we may find people in offices or not, but we're not going to like put that restriction on where they are. Now, for the most part, that's true. I think there was one position where we were hiring it and we wanted it to be like in San Francisco because it was a design position. The person who was going to work with it really wanted to collaborate in person. That was a co-founder of mine, but he's no longer with the company. So like that was the last position we posted that actually had a location on it, and that was a couple of years ago. And from there on out, like we're pretty remote. Actually, this year we still have a lease on an empty office in Michigan.
Oh my god!
If anyone needs an empty office in Michigan, we totally got your office, and huge discount on rent.
Excellent.
But that lease runs out, I think in March. But we basically will have no physical locations at the end of by March of next year.
So as of March next year, we'll be 100% remote company with.
Well, I mean, in the sense like we've been 100% remote, except we still have this lease we're paying for an office that no one went to. But
yeah,
so that's been happening for a while. I mean, I would argue we've probably been 100% remote for many years. We just like rented some empty office space that people would occasionally show up to.
And you mentioned your team. You were talking about your team, Ben. DevOps, customer service. What's the breakdown? Are there more elements to your team? I'm sure there are.
Well, I mean, it's a standard software company, right? So you have marketing. We never really built out sales because our price point was more turnkey. Really big customer service team. Like we invested very strongly in customer service. I think our belief is that customer service sort of does sales, sort of does customer success, and generally these are the people that kind of live and breathe the passion of your company all the time. So finding really good people there is excellent. And then engineering, product team, just normal. I guess PMs, designers. I don't think there's anything abnormal about the way Olark is structured.
No, but yeah, I suppose you'd expect that customer service would be an important part of your company.
Yeah, I think part of that is interesting. I think part of the reason we went so hard on customer service at the beginning is that when I'd ran the web hosting company prior, we had underinvested in customer service and it had caused problems. And what basically happened is like the owners were doing all the customer service. Then we hired staff to do customer service for us, which is just, like some college buddies looking for like part-time jobs. And those guys just really didn't do as good of a job as we had done and didn't care as much as we did. And so I think that, actually, in the early days of Olark, we all did customer service. So we did a rotation where every person on the team would do customer service, like one day a week or a couple hours a week or whatever. And then eventually when we decided, even when we hired a customer service team, we still kept doing that where everyone on the team would go around and do it. And it wasn't until a couple of years in that we decided operationally we needed to sort of take all hands support, which was operationally, which meant everyone on the team was doing customer service. Mm-hmm. We had to, we wanted that to no longer be a requirement. We wanted it to be so that we could have the customer service team could handle all the customer service load, and it was a bonus if other people went and did their all hands support shifts. And so that transition happened over a couple of years probably, just sort of going from having everyone do customer service as part of their job, like where it was needed for them to do it, to where everyone did customer service optionally, just because like we had built this culture where everyone did customer service and they could hop on and like dog food the new release they made, or just see how customers were reacting to something by hopping on to chat and just doing a support shift.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned earlier that you get lots of applications, right? What for you?
Not for that. Sorry.
that okay?
Yeah, that's all right. I was just
You were saying that you get lots of applications, and well,
yeah.
that doesn't really surprise me. What with that being with you being bombarded with applications, what really stands out for you, or how can somebody really stand out if they are applying to you, either to a job that is posted or a
Yeah.
speculative application?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I used to run hiring for a while, but we hired someone who is so much better than I am at it that it's fantastic. So Mandy is probably the person who could best answer that question.
Okay.
But I could try to like give you a sense for it, right? So to get in the door, you have to understand that it's a pretty competitive process. So, whatever position you're applying for, just assume that we're going to get a lot of applicants for it. So, put in the time, polish your resume. We normally ask pre-screening questions at the beginning. Put in the time. Like, don't just like go to our website and just see these pre-screening questions and just kind of like knock out answers really quick. Like, take the time to take those pre-screening questions, put them in a Google Doc, write good answers to them. Get your friends to give you feedback. You could even probably email us and ask for feedback on some of those pre-screening questions too.
Okay.
I bet Mandy would probably give you a little bit of time, probably, if you send us something. So take the time. We have chat on our website. You could stop by. You can ask questions there. I think, generally speaking, to get an interview, right, to just get past a resume screen, like, one, you got to have a resume and a set of answers to our screening questions that make sense, right? Like, even if you're the most passionate person in the world, you're probably like, we have enough applicants that there's lots of passionate people in that applicant pool.
I bet.
So like we can't let one passionate person who's done like all this extra work, who's not qualified, is probably not going to make it through. I mean, every once in a while we'll wildcard someone. So if you went out and did something crazy, like built something cool with our API, or like create a video, or just kind of went kind of over the top over other applicants, you probably would stand out, and like you probably would get an interview. Like, basically, our hiring process is kind of like standard, and we'll wildcard people every once in a while just to get them into the funnel, because sometimes those people can be amazing. But generally speaking, having a resume and the answer to our screening questions is the way to do it. And if you want to, if you can wow us some way that we haven't seen before, you'll probably get an interview. But like, during that interview, if you're not qualified to do the job, like you can spend all this time doing something awesome and then just like bomb the interviews.
You get found out.
But like, like that might help you in the future when you're applying for another job that you are qualified for, because we'll remember that being wowed that one time. So so anyway, yeah. So that's how you get a phone call, and then once you get the phone call, Mandy would probably screen to make sure that like you were, like I said, like, generally qualified for a position, you understand what it was, and could communicate clearly with us. And then for most of our positions, we have homework that we give you. We'll like say like, hey, go like do this work for us, and we'll generally give you like an Amazon gift card or something like that in exchange, because we know this stuff takes time. And so after someone does the homework, we'll read over every single homework that comes in. And if you get to homework stage, it means like you got a shot getting the job, basically. Like, we don't basically at every phase, we're cutting people out. Like, we only want to basically be looking at people who can potentially be hired. Like, there's no we're feeling nice, we're just gonna like, no, we don't do that at all. It's all like very, very scientific. Like, if you're doing work for us, you get a shot at getting it. And so we turn people down as early in the process as we can, just so no one was wasting any of their time. And do the homework. We'll evaluate the homework and generally have sort of we call them technical interviews, but they're basically like reviewing the homework plus like kind of diving into sort of the technical skills required for the job. And then after that, we do a culture interview, which is where assuming at that point, we assume basically you can do the job. You pass the technical interview, you can do the job. The culture interview is where we talk about our values, because Olek is a very values-driven company,
I love that.
and
Yeah.
uh, we want we're not like looking for people that fit any individual mold, but generally speaking, the people that get hired at Olek are engaged on some level with our values. Like they can't sort of view company values as sort of like bullshit, and that would come across in the cultural interview. It's like you have to kind of be bought into what we're trying to do at the company, and then we'll give you an opportunity to talk about the value that you feel like you will be the best at exemplifying, the value you think you'd be the worst at exemplifying, and have like kind of a real conversation. And if that goes well, we'll take the best couple of people from that round, and we'll bring them in and have them work remotely for us for a day, and we'll pay them for the whole day, consulting rate, and basically give you a day in the life working at Olek. And
Sounds
if
good.
you ace that, you get a job. Pretty straightforward.
Bingo. Is it easy as that, eh? And
Yeah, no problem.
no, it's good. It's great. And I mean, there's quite a lot there. I mean, I'd love to. Can you give us any clues as to what's in the homework at all?
I mean, it's specific to the job role. I mean, just
Okay.
like if
Fair
you're
enough,
like
yeah.
a director of marketing, which we've recently been hiring, like your homework looked like, here's a bunch of data that's not necessarily exactly Olek's data, but is like close enough to give you a sense for what the job will be like. Give us your like 90-day plan and your 180-day plan, and state any assumptions that you need, any questions you need answered. Like a pretty like thoughtful kind of assignment, but that's for a more of a higher level. For a CS person, actually, I'm not sure what the homework looks like there. My guess is that if it's been iterated on a long time since I worked on the hiring process, but probably in the early days, what we would do is give you like a couple of example customer situations and have you sort of write the emails that you would write back to them, and or maybe that type of thing.
And you talked about the culture element of the interview. How do you? Because it's really it's quite difficult, I think, to actually convey culture or to kind of express it so it doesn't sound contrived. How
Sure.
do you do that?
Well, I think in our case, you raise a good point. I think that a lot of people like there was this old term or culture fit. It's like, oh, like if someone was in the office on Friday, you'd go grab a beer with them or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that is actually like a pretty dumb, like pretty stupid way of looking at culture. I think that that's a good way of determining if someone should be in your frat, maybe, or if like they want, or like if this person might be your friend.
Yeah.
But like you're not trying to hire for friends necessarily, right? Like, yeah, I mean, ideally you can get along with like most people, so like anyone can be your friend, but like you're not trying to like optimize for this is like the most likely to be my friend kind of person. So at Old our culture and views have evolved over time. In the early days, we cared a lot about conflict styles, because when you're working remotely, it's harder to assess whether you're doing all right if you are like not prone to conflict. Like if you're a conflict avoider, it's easier for you to have conflict and not talk about it and not deal with it. So in some of our earlier interviews, we would ask kind of like some conflict related questions and try to understand how people would deal with conflict. Like like looking at like unresolved conflict was always a red flag there. I don't think that's in our current batch of direct. We probably do that in a more indirect way now. And I think I kind of alluded this a bit. Like we give people the opportunity to review our values. There's a lot written about them on our website, and you can read. Just search the internet, OLARC values. There's this stuff that comes up all over the place, and we want people who kind of take the time to understand what we're about. And most job candidates at that stage understand what we're about. And the way that we look at culture fit is we have our champs core values, right? Chill, help each other, assume good faith, make it happen, practice empathy, and speak your mind. And so we look for people who value those same attributes.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the culture interview, we look at how you communicate about those values, and the things that you say, and how the questions you ask us, how you engage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's generally like generally I'd say most people like do really like it's not that hard of a interview to pass,
Mm-hmm.
but you'd be surprised at how many people like it turns out it's just not a good fit, because you're interviewing each other, right? And our company's not for everyone, and it's it's a chance for those people that are considering working at Olark to like ask questions of the people that work at Olark,
Of course.
and see how it feels, So, you can think of it as kind of like a thoughtful discussion about our values is a way of looking at the culture interviews, and expecting some self-reflection from the candidate.
I think a lot of people struggle with it, actually, Ben, in terms of that. You mentioned that it's a conversation, that interviews a conversation, a two-way flow of information. I think a lot of people believe that, or struggle in some way to actually ask a question in return to something that you might have asked them, if you see what I mean. They think that they need to leave all the questions to the end, and it's kind of a bit of an old school way of looking at it.
Yeah, I think that is just a challenge, right? Because interviews are socially constructed, and people kind of have a way in which they expect them to work. And I think that's okay. In our interviews, we probably have some prompts for them to ask us questions. So like, it's not like it's like a conversation where we're giving you the floor, right, to go talk. And then those questions at the end, you mentioned like a lot of people save all their questions at the end. Well, certainly those questions at the end are super freaking important in hiring. So, if you are a candidate, right, like, make sure you have some good questions.
Of course,
you can go make a list of questions before you walk into the interview. Like, honestly, because like, who you're meeting with. You can look them up on LinkedIn. You are you're trying to work at this place for at least a couple of years. You better have this is a thoughtful process, and you better have some thoughtful questions to bring into this. Even if you already know the answers, just confirm you actually know the answer, because sometimes people don't give you the answer you're expecting.
And I think, on top of that, well, a lot of people, it's not just, I suppose, the interview process, but even when it comes to applying, you get, obviously, I'm sure you've seen this, a lot of people are just really spraying and praying and sort of sending out their resume here and hoping that one of them will stick, and not necessarily reading what's on the website, the values, and connecting their values in their application or their interview with yours in many ways. So they're clearly not sort of read and understood everything.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's definitely hard as a candidate to find the right place. I think, just looking at our candidate pool, right? Like, there's probably many, many people that could do the job when, 300 people apply, and our process isn't perfect. We're not necessarily trying to get the best person out of the process, because to get the best person, you might need a process that takes longer than is business feasible. Mm-hmm. What you're trying to get is a candidate in the top 5% or so. Mm-hmm. And so you have to imagine that hiring processes are designed both for the candidate and for the company. The company needs to fill the position at some speed, or else they wouldn't have posted the position.
Sure.
And so everyone's trying to come up with the optimal way of getting sort of the best result they can in a fixed amount of time and a fixed amount of effort. Mm-hmm. And from a job candidate perspective, I think the spray and pray strategy is probably not an optimal strategy for what you're trying to do. Now, there's a lot of factors at play in what the optimal strategy might be for you. If you are, if you have a killer resume, for example, then probably you can just pick a couple of companies and reach out to them and talk to them, and they'll more or less interview you, and you can interview them. If you don't have a killer resume, then you're in a tougher situation, and you have to uh, I think one thing that good hiring managers will do is when you reach out to a company and you just figure out who their like HR recruiter people are, just set up they're called informational interviews. Just talk to those people and understand what they're looking for. And, if your set of skills is not great or not perfect for that job, and that's, in your mind, this is like the perfect job for you, I think a good thing to do is to ask that hiring manager, like, hey, like, I know I eventually want to end up here, but like, what do you think I should be doing at this point in my career that's going to help me get there in the future?
Excellent.
And I think that if you can build that plan a few steps out, it makes it more tractable to, end up at those places that you're really excited to end up at, rather than just like, oh, I'm going to spray and pray and I'm just going to end up like wherever I can right now. I think if you had a little bit more intentionality around it, you could be like, you know what I should be doing right now? I should be going back to school because like I need to have like X and a Y, or I need to go find like a company that has a really good training program or something like that, so that I can add that to my resume, so that when I show up for the next interview, like I will have really great answers for those 4 questions that I just didn't know those things.
And do you tend, Ben, to hire more experienced candidates, or do you like to nurture, or is it just a mixture of
it's
the above?
such a I like hiring for aptitude. I like smart people. I like people who show that they can learn, and we basically do our best to ignore resume after you pass resume screen. Okay. So like we tend to not show people's resume later in the process. Wow, because from our standpoint, once you pass resume screen, you've passed resume screen. So we feel like you can do the job. Once you pass technical interview, you pass like, your technical skills are good enough. And now it's just how you perform during the interviews. Like that's the way that we sort of do it. Like I said, we try to narrow that down as you go through the process, because like we don't want like a lot of people hanging out in the process in limbo who wouldn't get the job if they didn't like excel at the next step. And so, we have a lot of like really, we're a relatively small company, right? But we have, there's an engineer who works at Olark who has a master's degree in social work. We have a lot of people who either don't have, like, who have non-standard college degrees. Some people didn't graduate from college. Like we try to, other experiences substitute for schooling. Like we have a lot of smart people. We have some smart people who have really freaking good resumes. We have some smart people who have horrible resumes. And after you add Olark on there, the resume is fantastic. Like when they're hired, their resume might not have looked that great for some of the positions we were going. So at least for us, we're always willing to look a little bit past like what school you went to, or what degree your college was in, or if you went to college and stuff like that. So
I love that.
And on the position basis, it just depends on the position. If we're hiring for a senior position, we're more likely to look at experience, or like if you're have less experience and you're applying for a junior position, you're gonna have to work harder to prove to us that you have the expertise, but you're going to be asked the exact same question as a person who has more experience.
Do you have obviously the core of your business is communication, and like I said before, building relationships. How do you? I don't know. Obviously, the interview will give you a good steer as to the sort of how the person listens, etc., and that sort of thing. But are there any other indicators to you of somebody who could be really good in your customer service team, for example?
Well, I think the interesting thing about the interview, right, is remote communication. Like, for example, homework is written, the application is written, the communication with Mandy, who runs hiring, is all written. So we're evaluating your communication as well as like throughout the interview, right? Like it's a mix of written and verbal communication throughout the whole process, and so that does tell us stuff, especially like when we do a day in the life working day. like we'll understand how people kind of are going to engage with their coworkers and their communication styles. And the interesting thing is we have a mix of extroverts and introverts at Olark. I would think more people are probably more introverted, a little bit more quiet on average, and some of these situations are hard for those people, it can be hard for those people, and we try to do our best to build like a pretty inclusive process. I mean, for any position, right? The modern day society requires kind of this face-to-face interview as part of the hiring process. Like WordPress I think has a chat back and forth hiring process more or less that sounds pretty awesome, but it's not something we've tried ourselves because we do end up doing a lot of like verbal communication at Olark. So like when we're having an interview like this, it's not just for fun. It's because like we need verbal communication as an important skill at Olark, given the way that our company is organized. And so I guess, I mean, I don't really have any great advice for how to stand out during that process. I think that probably taking a little bit of extra time to polish written communication is always a good step. Just because I think typically it's easier. Like you can polish written communication, you can't really polish verbal communication. Sure. You can take a few more seconds, to think about your thoughts, but you just have the opportunity to spend a little bit more time making sure you're communicating clearly when it's written.
Mm-hmm. And any particular peak periods when you're hiring? Is there any particular times a year when you hire most? And
yeah, that's a good question. I don't think there's a particular period of time when we hire the most. I mean, generally when we have a position, we post it, we promote it. And, we're a small business. We're like roughly 30 people. So like, we're not going to be able to hire like tons and tons of people. I mean, that would be, we are bootstrapped. So one thing that would be kind of cool for raising money is you could go hire lots of people, but that's not really like our MO. I don't, generally speaking, like our quarters are a little bit, they're a little offset. So like our Q1 starts in February. Mm-hmm. And so like you can just kind of follow that calendar around the year and kind of assume that most hiring decisions are going to be made before the start of a quarter, before we post a job. So like you could think like, sure. Okay, well, it's probably more likely that we're going to post a job in say March than post a job in January, because January is the end of a quarter and March is the beginning, like the first month, or February is like the beginning of the quarter. So so much more likely that the jobs are going to be posted at the beginning of a quarter, beginning of an Olark quarter than the end of an Olark quarter, just because unless that's generally speaking the pacing. But probably if you go look at our historical job listings, it could be interesting to know how well that matches up.
It varies.
Right.
Okay. So somebody's got through the interview process. You've got an onboarding process. You put all that into place as well, and tools that you use as well.
Yeah, I mean, we put just as much work in interviewing is just the beginning of the process, right? Sure, you're bringing in remote people. You need them to feel like they're part of the team, and our onboarding process takes. For most positions, at least 2 weeks of just like very, very onboarding focused work. So, meeting your team, understanding the tools, understanding how to work at Olark, how to work remotely. But, in a way, we're all always onboarding, right? You're always like kind of learning and growing and upping your game. And so that doesn't really stop.
Okay. And for you, we're coming close to the end now.
We are, I know.
You've given us a lot of time. Thank you, Ben. What do you see? What's the future for Olark? And how do you see? Yeah, where's your future lie?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think at the beginning of this call, I kind of talked about this a little bit. I think if you look at Olark's mission, our mission is to make business human, and we have this live chat product right now that exists in a world where a lot of competition, I think, is very focused on automation and AI. And so I think what you'll see is Olark really, really championing the automation side that really helps humans perform better. I think like where we're trying to focus is how do we help you bring your full self to work every day? How do we make sure that you are, in a position where you can grow, so you're incentivized to do a good job every day, right? So we're going to be the live chat company that sort of takes some of the values we've built internally and encode them into our product in a way that makes our product quite a bit different from what some other competitors are building. So that's sort of the future of the live chat product. At the same time, we have this broader mission, and we see our mission as sort of this championing this idea of business humanity. So you'll see us launch a couple of new products that are designed to kind of help people sort of be the best that they can be. So really looking at things that people do well and help them do it even better. So an example of this is a product that we're about to launch probably in January. It's called Dino Insights, and it's a product that helps you pull insight out of interviews. So, for example, a lot of product managers, journalists, podcasters do interviews like constantly as part of their job. And a lot of people inside product organizations and software companies actually avoid doing interviews all the time because they feel like it's too much work or they don't know how to get value out of it. And so our thinking is that more people should be doing interviews, and that in doing interviews, that most people could get more insight and learn more from those interviews if they had tools that help them structure their thinking. And so the first product here is just a product that helps you conduct verbal remote interviews and pull insights out of it and store those insights for later consumption to share within your org. Because another thing that often happens with interviews is that they get lost, or they exist like just in a user researcher's like local computer or like spread out around Google Drive, and they're messy, and you might end up with a report here and there, but it's really hard to go back to the source materials. So a lot of one product helping people do better interviews, to get better insight, to build better products, to just sort of generally learn faster. And I think it's one product that'll be launched in January. And then another product that we're working on is taking a lot of our philosophy around customer service and turning it into a set of courses that people can use to sort of learn and think about customer service the way that we think about customer service, and the way that's sort of helped us build this successful company. And we think this is great for a couple of reasons. Like, one reason is, quite honestly, a lot of customer service training out there is crap, and it's just not modernized for what it means to be kind of an enlightened customer service person. Sure. Like, if you think about most call center jobs, they're basically set up for, you handle rote stuff. If you're really good, maybe you get promoted to manage a bunch of other people handling rote stuff. And we want to help people reframe that role of customer service into something that really helps produce insight. It helps produce, employees that can move up and grow within that organization, who really understand that company's customer. And in many ways, customer service can be a profit center, and I think a lot of times it's framed as a cost center. So it's sort of courses that help reframe the philosophy of customer service, and not just like, here's how you deal with an unhappy customer or whatever. There are elements of like, how do you take care of yourself as someone whose main job is expressing empathy all the time. So we've launched that course kind of internally. We've done a beta with a couple of other companies, and they've found it to be really good. So that'll be cleaned up a little bit and relaunched probably in 2019. So that'll be really cool too. So I think you can think of Olark. The way that I like to think about Olark is, if Fog Creek was sort of this developer-centric incubator for all these great ideas. They helped spun out Trello, that spun out Stack Overflow. Yeah. Many people have never heard of Fog Creek. And I want Olark to sort of be like the Fog Creek of human-centered business, focusing on like the problems, the areas where humans are really good at, and helping humans doing those jobs even better. And so I think where we're trying to go is to be able to take that core business of Olark, live chat, grow it, but also spin out these really interesting solutions to other problems. And hopefully inspire more entrepreneurs to, take AI and figure out how it can make humans like a ton better rather than just replace humans. Because I feel like one is a lot more fun for all of us.
Well, Ben, you're inspiring me. You've inspired me to even be on this call with you today. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time. You've given so much yourself today. Thank you. And yeah, we'll be keeping a lookout for Dino Insight and your other product
Yeah,
later in the
yeah,
year as well. So thank you
for
so much for
sure,
joining us.
Alex. It's been fun.